I'm going to try to help out those that don't know instead of enhancing those that already do. Will it run? You see that all over YouTube. A lot of people have made some good money doing will it run videos. But long before there was ever YouTube, and nobody even knew what the word YouTube meant, and long before the term will it run ever existed, I was out in fields getting cars that sat for a long time to run, not for video, because there was none. Well, there was videos, but not YouTube. But I was doing it just because of maybe I wanted the car, maybe I needed parts from the car and I need to get it home. And I did have a high success rate at getting cars to run. In fact, I really can't think of but one time on a really old 50s something Chevy, I can't even remember the year, that I lost on. But other than that, I usually always won. And I just want to share with some people some of the tactics I use. Every car poses a little different battle plan, so to speak. But I do want to say that I have a quite large following of people that they're not interested in a $7,000 engine, a $3,000 transmission and torque converter, and everything's got to be. No, they just want to maybe get Grandpa's pickup running that sat behind the barn. Maybe he's gone and that's their remembrance of him and they want that. I've talked to people that, in fact, I talked to a lady that wanted to get a truck that sat in the field going because it was her dad's and he was gone. So I just want to give some tips to those people, how they might begin, be it, you know, for whatever your reasons are. Maybe it's just a cool car and you want to try it. So let's start with what do you want to identify when you walk up to that car? It's old to somebody else isn't old to me. I found that out quickly. Some people say they got an old car that they want help getting going, or they got this old vehicle that they want me to look at, and I go out there and it's a 1996. Well, that was old to them, and in a sense, in the car world, that is an old car. But to me, old means at least carbureted, not fuel injected. So I just want to cover a little bit here on how I prepare to start a car with a carburetor if it's been sitting. Carbureted cars, how do I do this? Try to give you a range. Probably every car above 1988 is going to have a form of fuel injection. There's always that specialty out there that wasn't, but let's just say 88 and above would be a good point to say it's probably fuel injected. And let's say 1980, 1981 or whatever below is probably carbureted. And I'm trying to generalize. I'm not sticking with the Mopars. I'm going Ford, Chevrolet, Mercury, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, all of them, right? Including Dodge, Plymouth, and Chrysler. One thing that I disagree with is there are a lot of people out there and channels that say, and people on the forums that say, if they don't do it right, you don't show them right, they're going to have a bad experience and you're going to destroy the hobby. They're going to throw in the towel. That's not true. Did every single person out there, including you, everything you touched on the car was first time success? You never rounded a bolt, you never broke a spark plug off, every car started. Come on, guys. I mean, you know, the 14-year-old girl, when her heart's broke by the ninth grader who left her, she's never going to look at a boy again 24 hours later until the next note comes from another guy. Then guys are cute again, right? So disappointment doesn't mean you never return to it. So my opinion is, if you have that car and you want to try to get it running, go try. Go try. You don't know until you try, right? So I want to first of all show you how to identify if it's fuel injected or carbureted, because there's people that don't even know that, you know. Fuel injection will have a throttle plate. This has got a throttle plate on it. But if you look, there's no place for fuel to sit. There's no bowl to hold the fuel. You got electronics and plug-ins, 1, 2, 3 plug-ins and a throttle plate, but there's no place to hold the fuel. This is a common multi-port type of fuel injection. So if you see something, I'm going to show you what a bowl looks like soon. If you see this, and especially if you got fuel rails, you obviously got fuel injection. But not all of them look like this. And especially if you're working on an older car in the 80s, it may have throttle body injection. Now this will fool some people that don't know to saying my carburetor, because it kind of looks like a carburetor they've seen in pictures or at a car show, kind of designed like one. But if you look, there is vacuum hoses, plug-ins, and you can find that on carburetors too, depending on the car. But there's no bowl to hold the fuel. Carburetors always hold fuel, or most of them. Somebody's gonna say, my skid loader from 1962 didn't. It had something up, whatever. But if you look, it's just a throttle body. There is no place for fuel to be held. There's no mechanism to work an accelerator pump. It's just a throttle body injection. A carburetor will always have, and no matter the carburetor, it's always going to have bowls with floats in them to hold the fuel, and it's always going to have a fuel inlet. These got fuel. This one right here will have a fuel inlet, okay? But this one here will always have, it needs this because it's not pressurized by a fuel injection spray. It's always going to have some form of a siphoning tube, and it's always going to have a place to hold a bowl. And you can just see when you look that there are bowls on each side. That's one style. Here's another style. Here you got a bowl and a bowl to hold fuel, and here's your vent siphoning. I don't know, I'm trying to talk in a language that if you're not familiar with this at all, it makes sense. You got your breathe-in vent tubes here for pressurizing the bowl system, is what that does. But I'm not trying to talk down to anybody. I'm just trying to make sure it makes sense to somebody. And even on this style, this old 2-barrel here, if you look right here, there's a bowl. And the fuel comes into that, and the fuel sits in the bowl. So that's a fast way to tell, is your 85 Impella fuel injected or carbureted. You'll also have on all carbureted cars an accelerator pump. Here you can see it being worked right here. See that? See the levers and the mechanisms working that accelerator pump going up and down. On this one here, you can see it down here. This right here, accelerator pump. This lever works this accelerator pump underneath here. I don't know if they can see that right here. That's the accelerator pump. But your throttle will be hooked to in the form of an accelerator pump. On this one, here's where the throttle works. It's got a rod hooked to an accelerator pump. And if you notice, on the fuel injected cars, there is no rod working an accelerator pump. Also, if you follow the main fuel line coming out of the carburetor, follow it down, it's going to lead to some form of a fuel pump that's going to be bolted to the engine, probably down in the lower half someplace along the side of the block, fuel would come in and fuel is going to come out toward your carburetor. And that's the basics, how you can go up to just about any car if you don't know and say, I don't even know where to start. Is it fuel injected or carbureted? I don't know. It was Grandpa's 85 Chevy police car, Impala. He was proud of it. I want to get it going. That's how you can tell. Now some people, they just want to throw a battery in and see if it cranks. I mean, if that's what you want, you can, obviously. But I like to, when I walk up to a vehicle that hasn't run in a bit, I like to pull the dipstick out. Most of us know how to do that. At least you should. If you got a driver's license, you should know how to check the oil. Check the oil and make sure there's oil in it. You don't want to try starting it if there's nothing on the dipstick. That's a problem. Another thing is I always look in the radiator. That can tell you something. If it's a sealed system, there should be fluid in there, and if you can't see it, and this is just by visual, open the cap, look. If you don't see it, try pouring a little water in or something, and if it comes right up right away, okay, that's cool. But if it takes gallons, that probably says something that there's bigger problems probably. But let's just say you got some fluid, you got oil. Next thing I like to do is verify that it turns over. Watch that crank. Look at that. How I verify, this is where it starts to get a lot of different opinions, is I like a socket. A lot of times they're around 1 inch or up to 1.25 inches, and it goes inside here. This is all bolted down here to the crankshaft, and that's every car. There's a bolt inside there. I just put the socket on there and use some form of a wrench to turn it, because it turns much easier. Many people will just actually grab the fan belt and try to mechanically turn it like that. Others believe you should pull out all the spark plugs. It's not a bad idea. And pour some WD-40, let it sit in there or whatever. It's not a bad idea. But here's my thing. If it's out in the field, a lot of times you go to pull off a spark plug wire and it gets wrecked, or you break the porcelain of the spark plug. So I just see how well it turns over. If I put this on the crank and it just turns easy, not a problem. That's what I do. I always turn, if it breaks free or if it's just a hair tacky, then it's like, oh, there it goes. I turn it over twice. 1 full revolution and a 2nd full revolution. And the reason being is your cam turns twice as slow as your crankshaft. So I like the cam to make 1 full revolution, which means the crank has to turn 2. So I turn the bottom one over twice to make sure. And the reason being is I want to know if there's a stuck valve or something wrong in the valve train. If you turn it over without hitting a glitch, 2 full revolutions, and most motors you go clockwise. If you're standing in front of it, you go clockwise like I am. You would go like a clock would go. If you do 2 full revolutions and you don't meet any resistance, you're getting real close to trying. So if I was gonna start this truck, let's say this truck hasn't been run in 3 years or 5 years, 10 years. I'm gonna take the air cleaner off, however it's set up. Even if it's got a hose that goes from here to the valve cover, just take it off. And then I'm gonna verify, if you don't know, again, I'm talking to those that don't know. Is it carbureted or is this fuel injected? It's time for you to look at what I got and answer the question. I'm trying to help you. This here, we see it's got the tubes on top. We see it's got bowls. And we see it's got, here's the throttle. Is there a lever that it's working? And we see it's hooked to an accelerator pump here. Some accelerator pumps, like I showed you earlier, got a shaft that work on top, but you're actually seeing, yes, it answers to all those questions. So we know we got a carburetor. Next thing I like to do is you can use a small funnel or just try to dump it in. I like these, some sort of a mustard bottle, but I like 2-stroke oil for starting it up if it hasn't run in 5 or 10 years, 30 years, because the 2-stroke oil will offer lubrication to the upper valve system. And if you wonder what kind of 2-stroke oil, weed eater 2-stroke weed eater gas that's mixed with 2-stroke, or snowblower, anything of that sort. It doesn't really matter if it's mixed 40-to-1 or 50-to-1. That's fine. That's just what I like to do. And then I like to fill these bowls up. So I'll put this in there and fill that one up, and put that one in there and fill that one up. How do you know when it's full? You'll see it dribble out inside there. So you're gonna have to look in there while you're doing that. Next thing I do is I follow the fuel line from the carburetor down to the fuel pump, and on this car it's gonna be over here. It's gonna be right down there. And if you look down there, you can see right there's the fuel pump. I'm pointing at it. And you can see this is the input line right here. It's a rubber hose going up to it, and this one here, if you follow it up, it goes right up to the carburetor. I'm gonna cut that. I don't want it sucking bad gas from the gas tank, and trust me, if it's been sitting for 8 years, you don't want it into the engine. At this point, I'm perfectly okay with throwing a battery in there. You got your gas, you verified its carburetor, you filled up the bowls. If there's 1 bowl or 2 bowls, this has 2 bowls because it's a 4-barrel, but if it was a 2-barrel like I showed you, you would fill up the 1 bowl. You got gas in the carburetor, you disconnected the fuel line from the gas tank right up here at the engine, it's easiest, and you verified it's got oil in it. There's some liquid inside here. Even if there's not liquid inside the radiator, you're fine if you want to try it. At this point, you've turned the engine over. You know the engine's free. You got gas up here. If you want to put a battery in here and give her a whirl, it's not a problem. When I hook up the battery, I always try to verify that when I hook it up, I like to listen for any sizzling, smoke, smell smoke. If so, disconnect it, because you can run into where a mouse chewed up the wrong wire and it's shortening out, and it's gonna burn the car down. When I hook it up, I look to see, is there spark? No spark. Put it on there. It's good if it's clean. And then I listen and I sniff. Is there any smoke underneath the hood? Do you smell anything happening? If not, I go look underneath the dash to see if there's anything smoking. If not, if you want to crank it at this point, you got oil, you got gas inside the carburetor, and yes, it'll run the gas out of the carburetor. And if you want to squirt a little bit inside the barrels, when I say a little bit, let's just call it a palm full. Turn it over and see what it does. If it fires and snaps and pops and acts like it wants to run, you can fill the carburetor up again and add a little bit more gas in the carburetor. Really, these things for the engine to run, you need a fill air mixture, which your carburetor will do that. You need spark, you need compression, and you need it to happen in time. Your timing chain covers that. The compression you hope is there, and then you just got to get at the gas and the spark, and it'll run every time. But if it turns over and it starts and it runs for a few seconds and it shuts off, you got a runner. Now you just got to take the holes that you cut on the fuel pump, put a longer hose on the fuel pump, run it to a little gas can, gallon or 2 of gas, and you can sit there and let the car warm up off of that. But other than that, that is really all there is to actually getting the car to run. So if you turn it over with gas in there and it turns over fine, but nothing's happening, you got to question if it's got spark. The easiest way to do that is just to pull one of these guys off. Easier the better. You just pull one of these off and put a spark plug in there. Shove a spark plug. If you don't have one, take that one off. Get the easiest one to get at. Put that in there. Or you can just bring one and put it in there. And you have to hold it against metal. It needs to be propped against metal. It's best to have two people for this to verify. They've also got spark plug or spark testers that you can put inside there, turn it over, and if you're by yourself, and it'll actually flash light if it's got spark. So there's multiple ways to do that. But if you do not have spark, the spark from the spark plug in between that little, let me just get one. So your spark is going to happen between this and that little air gap you see. I don't know if you can see it with the red there. That little gap in there, that's where the spark's going to happen. So you put this here, in there, you put it up against metal someplace, you turn it over, and that should snap. If it does not have spark, you just got a few components you got to look at. Most cars, if it's carbureted especially, it's going to have a distributor that's going to be suspect. It's going to have maybe if it's electronic ignition, that would be like 72, 73 on up. It'll have what a lot of people refer to as a brain box, that blue box right there. And depending on your car, it could be multiple other things, a few other things that could stop it, including a wire that's broke or chewed up by a mouse. So if you take the cap off, you can take the cap off and leave the plug wires. It's just got two little snappers here, one there, one there. You just flick those off. Some on the car, depends, have screws that you have to unscrew with a screwdriver or a small socket. Depends on your make of car, but you'll take that off. And if you look in here, this one has points. And points are really easy to see. They just, think of them not as points, but as contacts. Everyone knows what a contact is. Not everyone knows what a point is. So that right there is your contact, and it just opens and closes as the engine rotates, like that. So if it's got points, they could be froze together from 10 years of sitting or 20 years, and you just gotta break them apart. You can actually file in between there with a lady's fingernail file. That's just one tip you can do if it's points. Another tip is if it's electronic, I don't know what it'll look like underneath there. Yours might look differently, but there's going to be a form of a pickup inside there. You want to make sure all your components are there too. You should have a cap, should have a rotor under the cap. The wire shouldn't be chewed through. If a mouse chewed this wiring through, you can crank all day long, but it ain't going to run. So you got to follow the wire to make sure that the mouse didn't chew through the wire. And that's true too on this one. You just want to make sure. And if that's all good, you know, you can try swapping out the brain boxes on these older cars. Generally, they're not that expensive. The brain box will only be with electronic ignition. Points do not have a contact system will not have that brain box. So it's just a couple of things. It's hard for me to cover all of them because, like I said, cars are so specific. But once you know what make and model you have and you don't have spark, it'd be a lot easier for you to look online the components that make it run. And a lot of times you can buy the components cheap. I would also like to give you an option. You can go on eBay, or you can go to other sites, and you can buy these, I'm going to call them offshore ready to run distributors, plug and play. And basically this distributor has everything that you need to run your engine, and it bypasses your brain box. It's been good for me to have this in my life to bypass my brain once in a while. Help me out. And And then this is a ready to run. And there's a lot of good videos out there on how to set this in. Yours may not look like this on this end. It may have an actual gear. And if it has a gear, well then you know you got, this is timing, how to put it in time. I'm not going to show you all that to get too long, but if you have to go this route, you can usually get these off of eBay for like $69, ready to run. Hook up the wire, set it in. If you pull the distributor out, you want to make sure you look at which way this is pointing and point the next one at the same, or try. There's a lot of good videos on that. If you have to get this deep into it to get it to run, I suggest go find that video. It's hard to cover it all in one video. But I just want you to know that this is an option for $59, $49, or $69, that this will run your car. And they do make one for just about every car out there. And you can drop your distributor in and hook it up. Usually they go in minutes, and they will run your car, bypassing all the factory, you know, electrical things that might be giving you a problem. I hope that I showed you enough, and really how simple it is, that generally most of the time, if you can turn the engine over and add gas, if it has spark, usually unless something's broke, it's gonna run for you. I hope I helped clarify to somebody how to tell if it's carbureted or fuel injected. Again, this how to start a car is for carbureted cars. Fuel injection kind of covers a different method. So I'm basically talking about the classic car. I know this is a lengthy video, longer than I meant it to be, but if somebody can see this and it can inspire somebody to go out and try to start their car, their dads, their grandpas, never was a car guy, but now you have that sentiment, or whatever your reason may be, don't be afraid to go out and try it. Just try it. If you're really nervous, make sure you have the right fire extinguisher with. That's about as bad as it can get. Other than that, go out and have fun and see. Hope I helped somebody. Didn't confuse them. You never know.